This episode is going to be all about using the LiDAR sensor inside an iPhone and using that scanned data, importing it into CAD software so you can get a virtual rendering of what, say, an engine might look like inside your engine bed. Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to Motor City Boat Werks. Let's get to work. Welcome back to the shop. This episode, I thought I would do something a little bit different, and I'm going to be talking about some new technology and how you might use it for your amateur boat building. You know, the last couple of weeks I've been working on kind of planning for and getting ready for the new diesel engine that's going to go inside the pocket trawler that's behind me. And one of the things I've had to kind of figure out is whether or not the engine beds inside the boat, are they going to have to be modified or changed in order to accept the new engine so that the engine aligns with the shaft and everything kind of works the way that it should? Now, traditionally, you might do this using some patterns and very careful measurements and a little bit of mocking up. But I've been thinking about, is there another way to do this? At least so you can answer some simple questions about how the engine is going to fit inside the engine compartment on the boat. This episode is going to be all about using the LiDAR sensor inside an iPhone and using that scanned data, importing it into CAD software. How do you actually do it? What's the software you use? What are the steps that you actually have to go through to make this happen? So let's get started here. So let's talk about this LiDAR. What is it? What does it stand for? LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. If you think about it, it's like radar. It uses light pulses from your iPhone to kind of determine the range and distance to various objects. You can use LiDAR for mapping. You can use it for 3D scanning. You can use it to get very precise measurements. This is a feature that comes with all iPhones from about the iPhone 12 Pro onward. If you have something older than that, well, you're not going to have this feature. But all the new iPhones have this technology. On the iPhone itself, it looks like this little sensor right here. Can you see that? I first started dabbling with the LiDAR technology back in August of 2023. I was trying to figure out a way to scan the exterior of the pocket trawler while it was inside the shop so that I could then turn around and kind of transfer the scan into some sort of CAD software. I could get some very detailed measurements and kind of a hull profile, kind of get a rendering of what the hull of the boat actually looked like. The original technical drawings, the lofting lines, all this sort of stuff, no one has those anymore. They've disappeared, and when the naval architect for the boat passed away, all that stuff kind of went away along with Albin, USA, which really pretty much ceased to exist. So I wanted to try and come up with some of these lines myself. I was trying to scan the boat. What I determined was that the apps that were available for the iPhone, well, they really struggled with scanning something so large, like a 27-foot boat that's about 13 feet off the ground. There were a lot of lost artifacts, these areas in the scan that were kind of imprecise. You know, the scan didn't come through perfect, and it really didn't do a very good job. Not to mention, I wasn't able to find a way to transfer the actual scan to what would be considered, you know, the files needed for, say, a CAD drawing. I'm going to be talking about two things, LiDAR scanning and CAD design. Let's talk about what they are. The LiDAR is the actual scan that comes from the iPhone. You can't see the light pulses. It's, you know, invisible to the naked eye, but it makes the scan for you, and that's all captured in whatever app that you use. CAD, we all know, stands for computer-aided design. It's software used for making 3D graphical representations of objects. You know, they use it in manufacturing, design, architecture, all sorts of things like that. The software for doing the LiDAR scan versus the software for doing the CAD, those generally are not the same. They're different pieces of software. 30 years ago when I was doing these type of boat restorations, this technology didn't exist for the amateur. It wasn't available handheld in your pocket cell phone. It just didn't exist. So it's exciting to think that this new technology is now available pretty much to everyone who has a cell phone. It's something that you might want to check out for your boat restoration projects. You will see folks on YouTube doing 3D printing, using various scanners and CAD software to design parts and components. What I'm talking about is some very simple techniques. I'm going to tell you one of the biggest problems with this software doing CAD type of stuff. If you're not professionally trained to do this, if you haven't been through some classes or spent a considerable amount of time self-learning, well, it's really quite challenging to get up to speed to be able to do this. A very steep learning curve. And frankly, as an amateur boat builder, boat restorer, you got to be a jack of all trades, master of none. There's not enough time or maybe even a reason to kind of learn this software unless you're a professional engineer. So for the amateur, we just want to be able to know how to do a couple things, using the iPhone. Maybe take some precise measurements, maybe in this case, do some type of scanning that you can then hand off to someone else, an engineer who can actually, use your scan in their CAD software to do some placement fitting, say for the diesel engine in the pocket troller. Now, there's lots of different apps for the iPhone. Some are free, some are paid.
I'm going to be talking about 3 simple apps that I think you might want to take a look at. The first one is called the Measure app. It comes in the iPhone. It's part of the utilities. It's basically a virtual tape measure. You can use this thing to measure between 2 points. I like this because you can get into very tiny spaces sometimes when you couldn't physically fit a tape measure maybe inside there or your hand or your arm. It's pretty much point and shoot. Anybody can use this. I've used this several times when I'm out taking a look at a boat from my bucket list and I want to measure something and get an idea how big something is. The next app is called 3D Scanner app. It's available from the Apple App Store. It's 100% free, and there are a couple things you can do with this app, including measuring between different points and then overlaying them onto video or the actual scan of the surface, that you're working with. This type of overlay can be very helpful. I especially like that you can scan something first and then later on go back and actually take your measurements from the actual scan itself. The third app is called Onshape. Onshape is actually a type of CAD software, but it has an app, and the app allows you to natively import a scan from your iPhone into the CAD software, but then you can also export it out later on. Now we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. It's something you're going to want to see.
This is only about my experiences using a couple of free apps that are pretty much available to anyone. Now, I say it every time, I don't get compensated in any way for talking about any of the items and the people, in this case, the software, the apps that I'm using in my boat shop. I share this information in case you, as another amateur, are interested in techniques and things and tools that you might use in your amateur boat building or boat restoration. This channel has no sponsors, so you do me a big favor if you hit the like button and you subscribe and you spread the word about Motor City Boat Werks. Thanks so much.
Let's talk about how to use your LiDAR to get some very accurate measurements.
Good old tape measure, cardboard patterns works very well. It's very, very low tech, but I kind of wanted to double check my work and maybe see if there was a way to use this LiDAR technology to do some of this. That brings me to my next point. It sure would be great if you could use the LiDAR to get some very precise measurements on your boat project. So I put together a little video of how I was using it to get my measurements, and I sent that over to Keith at Beta Marine.
So what I've done here is I'm using a app called 3D Scanner app for the iPhone. I scanned this using an iPhone 15 Pro Max. And what this allows me to do is take some measurements, and I figured out a way to kind of go point to point and take, I guess, some very precise measurements. The scan is done in supposedly 1 meter scale, but you'll see the measurements on here down in centimeters. I kind of zoomed in on some of this, so it may not be super clear. but you'll see the height from the shaft to the base of the pan liner there, 19.61 centimeters. And then I try to go to 2 points on either side of the shaft where basically the corner of the engine bed stringers are, the original stringers. Now, there might be a way to take this image better, or to maybe zoom out so you can see a little better what's going on, but I have to use this app on my phone, so it's really not very big. It's also in portrait mode, so I then have to kind of shrink it, expand it to get it to fit the 16 by 9. But you can see the distance there from the same point to either side of the engine beds there, about 19.5 centimeters, maybe 20 centimeters. I experimented also trying to extrapolate out on a plane where the shaft would continue onto, but I wasn't able to do that precisely enough. There's not enough tools in this software. It's actually pretty limited. But this got me thinking that perhaps there is a way to get you some very precise measurements further along the engine bed, to help establish what the downward angle of the engine bed has to be, for the engine mounts. But you guys will have to tell me that, and I will have to figure out a way to somehow mark the engine beds so that it's picked up texturally with the scan. Now, I can also export this scan to you. And if you had an iPhone with this free app, you could take my project and then you could get the measurements that you need if your engineers, are a little more familiar and have a better way of doing this. I can send that to you.
I'll tell you, it's so challenging using some of the software and some of the apps that I basically gave up for a period of time and set the LiDAR experiments aside. And it wasn't until earlier this year that I started kind of messing around with it again as I tried to come up with some detailed measurements and discussing how the engine was going to fit on the engine beds with the folks at Beta Marine.
This brings us to how do you import a LiDAR scan into CAD software?
If you're like me, you'll probably get to a point where you want to do something a little more than just taking very precise measurements using the LiDAR in your iPhone. So I moved on to trying to figure out, was there a way to scan the actual engine room, the entire engine room, so that I could then give the scan to Beta Marine to see if there was a way for them to import it into their CAD software. I did all kind of searching on the internet trying to figure out if this was possible. It seems like somewhere someone would have come up with this. And what I found was that in most situations, you have to go from a LiDAR scan into some other type of software. And then from that software, you go ahead and get it to a kind of a common format that can be brought into the CAD software. At least as far as I found, there's no way to go directly from a LiDAR scan directly into some sort of CAD software. I think the formats and the data, well, they're really not compatible. One of the reasons I wanted to make this video was because I went through several apps for the iPhone trying to find one that was compatible with the CAD software that Beta Marine was using. They were using a very common piece of CAD software, Autodesk Inventor, but for some reason it's very difficult to find an app that will actually export the scan data directly into CAD software. It will export in some compatible formats, but the scaling becomes off for whatever object you've gone ahead and scanned, and it creates all sorts of problems. All of this is what led me back to the Onshape app. I had tried using Onshape a number of times before, but the learning curve was pretty steep, and I just couldn't wrap my head around how to use some of the CAD functions. It seemed like something that I didn't need. But on taking a second look, I suddenly realized that it was possible to not only scan from within the app, but I could also turn around and export it directly out, directly into some sort of CAD software that someone else could edit. Especially if they had professional CAD software, everything would come across 100% in the proper scale.
The app is free, but you need to register with an email to establish an account. First thing you do is log in, open up your account. First thing you're going to see is your library of stuff. Click on the folder that says Owned by Me. To scan a new project, click on the plus sign in the bottom right corner. This will bring up a new document. Go ahead and name it whatever you want. Hit the enter button, which creates it, and you'll come to this page here. Now we're going to make a scan. In the bottom left corner in the blue, it looks like a magnifying glass with a ruler. Click on that. You'll see this menu. Click on the first one, Import from Scan. This will access the LiDAR scanner in the phone. The scan won't start till you hit the record button. Now you can begin your scan. Follow the online prompts, move slowly, try and fill in all of the scan area. Once you got everything, go ahead and hit the stop button. In the upper right corner is a button that says generate. Click on that. Pop-up will ask you if you want to generate your scan. Click on the generate the scan. Depending on how big your scan is, it may take several minutes for all the data to kind of process out. Once it's completed, your scan should appear in your document. It should look something like this. There are online tutorials that explain how to use Onshape to kind of clean up the scan or do different things. We're not really going to cover that right now. Now what you want to do is you want to export this out into a format that can go into CAD. Go ahead and click on the bottom left tab. It says scan, and this should pull up this menu here. You want to choose export. Once you click on export, it'll give you the opportunity to rename the exported file. The file format you want to choose is going to be the SolidWorks file format. This file format is recognized by most CAD software, and you want to choose to download it to your iPhone. Files were a couple megabytes. You can download those to your phone, and then you can send them in an email attachment to someone. All they have to do is import it into their CAD software using the SolidWorks file format. That's pretty much it. From all this experimenting, there are a couple lessons I've learned trying to get a good LiDAR scan. The first one is that you really have to clean and prep your area ahead of time, remove anything that's reflective, clear away any kind of background clutter. Have good light inside the space where you're going to be working. It helped to have a small floodlight going inside the engine compartment. Plan out your scan before you ever get started. Kind of come up with a path that you're going to take, whether you're going to work from the top down or the bottom up, left to right. You need to know all that ahead of time so everything is very fluid. You really have to take your time. If you go too fast, you'll miss some of the surfaces and you won't get a good scan. Avoid going back over the same surfaces multiple times. That tends to create the artifacts, the imperfections in the scan. Avoid jerky movements or any type of sudden movements. Everything's got to be very fluid. Avoid very long scans that cover very detailed areas. The processing power of the phone can be limited, and there's a lot of data being crunched. Take multiple scans. For each one of these scans that I showed you in this video, well, I probably made 10 other ones that didn't work out very well for one reason or another. Lastly, have patience. Don't get frustrated. It takes a little bit of effort to kind of get this to work, but in the end, trust me, it's worth it. Ultimately, this whole process helped me understand what needed to be done to the engine beds so that I might be able to get the engine to fit in the future. Well, there's going to be some grinding and fiberglassing involved, trust me, but we'll cover that in another episode.
Hello? Hey, not for nothing, but it's pronounced LiDAR, not LiDAR.
Are you trying to make me look bad?
Hey man, I'm just trying to keep it real.
Well, you spell Boat Werks with an E.
Yeah, but...
I knew it all along. I was just doing it to see if you were paying attention.
So let's all remember that I'm not an engineer, and this is really an introduction for me, and maybe for you, about how some of this technology works. If you're a CAD expert or some sort of a LiDAR guru, make sure you leave a comment below. Drop me a note through the Motor City Boat Werks email. If you've got a better way to do this, This is all about sharing how to use this technology in amateur boat building and boat restoration. Well, there you go. I hope you got something out of that. It's always interesting. We can share tips and maybe learn something new in the boat works. I'll be doing future episodes where I talk about the purchase of the engine. We'll do a test run, and then we'll begin the installation process. All that will be covered in future episodes. Now in the boat works, summer has arrived. I think it's time to turn my attention back to the Skipper 20 sailboat. This little boat needs to be put together. It's time to get this project done and cleared off the board. Please join me in future episodes while I finish up this little sailboat. It's going to all come together. I think you're going to love it. I want to thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next time. Stay motivated.
If you're thinking about restoring a classic sailboat or an old trawler, check out all of the videos on my YouTube channel. Consider joining the workers or taking advantage of my boat restoration consulting services. I offer personal coaching for your boat restoration project. Be sure to like and subscribe. This channel would not be possible without your support. Thank you.